to see everybody again. Thanks for the introduction. And good to see Rebecca. We don't get to see you very often from over in Soto, so welcome. And here comes your notebooks and everything. So I don't know how many people have read the book, The Fred Factor. Keith knew about it, had heard about it. So I'll tell you a little bit about how I got introduced to the book and then sort of the impact it kind of made on me, and then walk through the 4 points that are really in the book after I do the story of Fred the postman. And Keith, we talked about when I first talked to you when you first got to Las Vegas, and so we'll kind of go through that. And on the surface of the story, you're probably going to wonder, what in the world does that have to do with your internship? What in the world does that have to do with hospitality and what you're doing here with us this summer? But by the end of the time, I hope you'll think about it in a way and walk out that door and go, that's exactly what leadership is all about, and that's exactly the kind of person that we all should be. And so I'll ask you to think about it in 2 ways, and we can go at it from 2 different lenses. One lens would be just this for you. So these principles and these concepts, think about it for you. And then also, when I was thinking about it last night and this morning, getting ready for this and talk to you, is you guys you're leaders already, and you're going to be leaders when you get out of school after this next school year. Everybody's a junior going into their senior year, right? So when you get out, if not right when you get out, shortly thereafter, you will lead other people. So I want you to think about this stuff in the context of, sure, you're going to understand it and you're going to apply the principles, but think about also how you can inspire other people to think about the principles as well. Okay? So we'll get started. Everybody knows I used to work at Walt Disney World, so I did, my internships were all at Walt Disney World. I didn't diversify my portfolio very well at all. Every single summer I went over there and did a different job, and I'm very passionate about the company. It's not very hard to be passionate about that company. And so when I got out of college, I went back to Orlando and worked in the hospitality industry. Who's doing an operational sort of track? Heard some housekeeping talk over here. Okay, so that was kind of me too when I was going through it. And also, why this is also cool for me and Rebecca, Justin, 10, 11, 12 years ago, we were sitting right there. So this is really neat for us to be able to come back and sort of share, give you some of the answers to the test, if you will. So I got out of school, I was a front desk manager, and housekeeping manager, and my management internship, and then spent some time, opened a couple of hotels. One as a housekeeping manager, and then I slid over and was a bell services manager, and then actually that was with Gaylord Hotels and Resorts, Gaylord Palms, and I transitioned back to Disney in 2003 and opened up Disney's Pop Century Resort. Anybody ever been there? Keith goes to school in Orlando, so I think he but I was a front desk manager there for the opening, and I was so burned out. And so those of us that have been here at the Cosmopolitan 17, 18, 19 months, we can kind of relate, and you've probably seen it, feeling it from a lot of us that have been here. For the opening of property is very brutal. So I can remember being very burnt out, and I was just like, oh my goodness, how am I going to get up every day and keep doing this in the 100-degree heat, go out there on the front drive at Disney's Pop Century Resort and keep making magic. And I remember being so burnt out. My mom sent me this book. So that's how I got introduced to this book, and immediately after I read the book, I started sharing it with my cast members at Disney's Pop Century Resort, and then I've really done it ever since. And so that's how I got introduced to the book. And so what I'll do now is I'll tell you sort of, it's written by Mark Sanborn, and I've had the opportunity to meet him a couple of times, and we have a relationship now, doing some work with him on the side, outside of here, which is very neat. And so I'll tell you the story of Fred the Postman. It's about him. And then we'll go from there. Any questions before we get started? Okay, cool. If you need to do anything during the presentation, feel free to just get up and go do it. Bathroom's right out here to the left. And then all the water you can drink. So Mark Sanborn moved to Denver, Colorado in 1987. In 1988, he bought a new house. It's a 1928 bungalow in a town in the part of Denver called Washington Park. So he was in his new old house for all of 2 days, and he had a knock on the door. And so he goes to answer the door, and there's a relatively short fellow, about 5'1", 5'2", pencil-thin mustache. And Mark opens the door, and there's a short fella wearing a blue uniform, carrying a bag. He said, "Hi, Mr. Sanborn, my name's Fred. I just stopped by to welcome you to the neighborhood and find out a little bit more about you and what you do for a living." So I like Mark Sanborn, you and I are probably thinking, we've never had a personal introduction to our mailman before. And so Mark's taken aback. He says, "Well, hello, Fred. Thanks for stopping by. I'm a professional speaker and an author, and I'm on the road about 200 days a year." And so Fred said, "That's great. That's great for me to know. So if you'll just give me your schedule so that I'll know when you're in town. And then what I'll do is I'll keep your mail and I'll bundle it, and I'll only deliver it when you're in town to receive it." And so, again, like Mark Sanborn, you and I are going, we've never had a choice of a la carte mail service. And so Mark says, "Well, Fred, I don't think that's necessary. I have a mailbox right here on the wall. Feel free to go ahead and just put my mail in the box." And then Fred says, "Oh, Mr. Sanborn, in this neighborhood, like most, if you're not home and mail is overflowing out of your mailbox, then the burglars will know you're not home and you might be robbed." And so Fred has a suggestion. He says, "What I'll do is I'll keep your mail with me and I'll bundle it. And then I'll only put mail in your box until the lid won't close anymore. And at that point, when it won't close, I'll put your mail between the screen door and the front door. Nobody can see it there. And then if there ever comes a point where there's too much mail between the screen door and the front door and it won't close, then I'll just keep your mail with me and I'll bring it back to you when you're in town." So now Fred is more worried about Mark Sanborn's mail than he is. So fast forward 2 weeks, Mark's coming back from a trip, from a speaking engagement. He comes back and he goes to his front door and he's opening the door and he looks down and his doormat is missing. And he looks over to the corner of his porch and he sees a box with the doormat covered. So what had happened is UPS had misdelivered a box 5 houses down to another house that was supposed to go to Mark Sanborn. So what Fred had done, he had picked up the box, carried it 5 houses down, wrote a personal note of explanation, and then tried to cover it with a doormat so nobody would see the box. So that first Christmas, 1988, Mark Sanborn left a gift in his mailbox for Fred the postman, and thanking him for his exceptional service. And the next day, Mark had an unusual letter in his mailbox with a stamp on it that wasn't canceled. And so he opens up the letter, and it was from Fred Shea, his postal carrier. And so Fred lived in North Glen, which is in the north part of Denver, and Mark Sanborn lived in the center of Denver. So what Fred had done is he knows that it's a felony to put unposted mail in a box. So even though he just took it from North Glen to Denver, he still put a stamp on, uncanceled, just to keep it legal. So Mark, he jokes and says after he took the stamp off, then he read the letter. And the letter read this: "Dear Mr. Sanborn, thanks for remembering me at Christmas. I'm flattered you talk about me in your speeches and seminars. I hope to continue to provide exceptional service. Sincerely, Fred the postman." And so fast forward 10 years, Mark Sanborn and his now wife Darla, he ended up getting married during that time. They received their mail from Fred the postman for 10 years. And it wasn't until he got around to writing the book that Mark realized that truth is transferable. What's true at work is true at home. What's true for Fred the postman is true for doctors, lawyers, front desk managers, bell services managers, marketing people, food and beverage people, and finance people. And so he ends up writing the book, The Fred Factor. And so he learned 4 life-changing principles that really have touched me, and they've touched millions of people. This book has sold 1.6 million copies domestically and internationally. Mark does the speeches and seminars on this book and the principles all the time. So what we'll do is and so you're probably wondering, okay, great, fantastic, Fred the postman's a really great guy. What's that have to do with us? What's that have to do with me? So we'll start with the 4 principles. The first thing we learned from Fred is everybody makes a difference. Everybody makes a difference. It doesn't matter how big or how small the organization. It doesn't matter the role, rank, or title of anybody. Everybody makes a difference. So you say, you know what, I've heard that before. Basketball coach growing up or soccer coach growing up. We can all do it. So here's the kicker. leadership, and all of us are going to be leaders. You're leaders now already by doing this internship, by stepping out of your comfort zone, coming to Las Vegas, living with us for 10 weeks. God bless you. When you go back to school, you're going to be leaders. People are going to be looking to you. And when you get out of school, you're going to have teams of people. Even if it's 2 or 3 people, up to 35 people, they're going to be reporting to you looking for leadership. The first job of leadership, if you're taking notes, is to prove significance. Is to prove significance. So the idea that everybody makes a difference, let's put a twist on it. So everybody makes a difference. The question really is, what kind of a difference are you making? So you know, you add to or take away from everything in life. You add to your team, or do you take away? Do you add to the experience of your guests and customers and clients, those of you that are going into advertising? Or do you take away from their experience in the relationship? So the extent to which we can first understand that as individuals and let that guide us as we go through. And then the next step is when you become that leader is to prove that significance to each individual on your team. Because when people feel significant, they make significant contributions. So unless people feel extraordinary, they won't make extraordinary contributions. So everybody makes a difference. Quick story, I'm walking, several months ago, I'm walking in the back hallways here at the Cosmopolitan. I'm on level 4 where my office is. And I was very busy that day. I was very nervous, as I usually am, about different things. And I'm walking through the back hallway, and the banquet setup people, I have a relationship with them now because I always pass them as I'm going to and from meetings in the back of the house, and they're back there setting up and breaking down and getting ready to roll out coffee breaks and whatever else. And I walked by one of our banquet captains, his name's V. And I walked by him and I said, "What's up, V? How's it going?" He just, without blinking, he said, "Life is beautiful." And I thought, you know what? Here I am working in this $4.2 billion property, and I wear fancy clothes, and I get a fancy business card, and I get to go talk to people like you every day, get to go make magic for guests every day. Why am I nervous? Life really is beautiful. So V doesn't get paid more money. He doesn't get a bonus package for doing that kind of thing. That's proof. Fred the postman and guys like V are proof that everybody makes a difference and everybody matters. That's the first thing. The second thing we learned from Fred is that success is built on relationships. Success is built on relationships. So it's not about the title, it's not about the power you can have over people, it's the influence you can have with people. And so the extent to which we can first be interested in other people instead of trying to come across interesting leads to truly better days. It takes an ordinary job or an ordinary conversation to make it extraordinary. Think about how many times that you've had to go sit through and endure another person talking about themselves, or another person talking about how much they know and you don't. What if it was the other way around? What if they were interested in you? I'll tell you a quick story. Did anybody know Mike Moshinko? Mike Moshinko, Christina knows him. He used to be a supervisor on our identity membership team. So for 11 years, Mike Moshinko was a table games dealer, and then he was a supervisor at Motor City Casino in Detroit, Michigan. All his career in gaming, he was a dealer or a supervisor in table games. And he has the opportunity to come to Las Vegas. He's always dreamed about coming here and being a dealer. So he's looking on the website, way pre-opening, and he sees the Cosmopolitan is opening, and they have one of the positions they have is an identity supervisor. He had no idea how to do it, no idea really how to work a Players Club booth, but he ends up interviewing, gets the job, and comes out. I met Mike, and then I was part of the opening team, so he was one of my 4 supervisors on our team, and I got to work with him. And then while he's now a dealer now, we were able to transition him to fulfill his dream to be back in table games in Las Vegas. So that's very cool. But the cool thing about Mike, I call him the relationshipper. But the way we run our department is I put the supervisors in charge of like certain things. And so one of his things was the warehouse, the relationship with the warehouse. We have all of the stock and the collateral and all of our office supplies that we wreck out of the warehouse. And so we need somebody on our team to really own that relationship. Operative word, relationship. So I told Mike, anybody ever see the movie Hoosiers? I'm a big basketball fan, so the movie Hoosiers is about back in the 50s, 60s, I think it was, the basketball team in the middle of Indiana. And Coach Norman Dale says, he's talking to one of his players, and one of his players is guarding the best player on the other team. He said, buddy, by the end of the game, I want to know what flavor bubblegum he's chewing. So I told Mike Mashinko in the early going, I said, Mike, he's also a basketball guy and a sports fan. I said, I want to know what flavor bubblegum those warehouse people are chewing. I want you to be best friends with them. So Mike, over the course of the next 6 weeks leading up, well, during pre-opening and then after we opened, Mike would on purpose give them a call. He would on purpose and make relationships. He would seek out people. He picked out 2 or 3 people, the gatekeepers, the ladies that work over there in the warehouse, and then ultimately the managers and directors. And he found out about them. He was interested in them. And so just routine conversation, he would ask them what their favorite restaurant was. He would ask them what they like to do in their spare time. And on a random Wednesday, at one point on his day off, he went to Outback and got a gift card for $50. Then he went to Olive Garden and got a gift card for $50. And he went to them unannounced and gave it to, I heard you say you liked Outback one time. Here's an Outback gift card from me to you. Hope we can continue to work together in the future. Same thing with the Olive Garden one. That's the definition of being a friend, and that's making relationships. So the whole point of that story is, it's not about how much he knew about the warehouse process. It wasn't about how much expertise he had at wrecking out stuff from the warehouse, but it was all about that relationship that he made. So next time there was a breakdown in communication, next time we were in a bind and we ran out of brochures, we ran out of the identity card stock, how easy do you think it was to get things righted, the right in the ship, because Mike had made that relationship? Everything is based on relationships. So as you go through, when you finish as you finish up your internship here, as you go back to school, whether it be University of Houston, University of Central Florida, Emory, Northern Arizona, wherever you're going back to, think about the relationships you can make. It's not really about the grade. Well, that's important, and I know you're really focused on that. Better is to worry about the relationship with those 1 or 2 professors that you know are going to continue to be a valuable resource down the road. How about for the rest of your 4 or 5 weeks here? What relationships can you make here that are going to help you both in school and then when you get out? Whether you come back and work for the Cosmopolitan or not, it's a small industry, and we hope that we can maintain that relationship with you. And then the last piece, if you think about that lens, beginning with the end in mind, you're going to be leaders. Think about not the power you can have over your team, the power you can have over those individuals, but the influence you can have as you work with them. So people work and they do things for their leader more so than they do them for themselves. So think about that as you go through. Everything is built on relationships. That's number 2. The third thing we learned from Fred is continually create value for others. The most important job skill in the last 1,000 years is going to be the most important job skill in the next 1,000 years, and that's our ability to continually create value for others. Continually create value for others. And the most important thing is to do that when you're not necessarily asked to do so. Solving problems that you didn't necessarily create, that will make you employable, number 1. Number 2, once you are employed, that's going to make you indispensable. They can get anybody to come out here and run a cash register. They can get anybody to go work in an advertising department and push paper. But the extent to which you can do things outside of your scope of work, the extent to which you can do things and solve problems before they're even coming across your desk, that's what makes you indispensable. And the indispensable piece is what makes you valuable to the company, and that value is what's going to allow you to just continue to have more opportunities to do that over and over again for more people. I'll tell you a story that Mark actually tells in his speeches and seminars. It's also in the book. And we're going to try to get you all the book, by the way, so you can look forward to that. Anybody ever been to the Denver Zoo? You've been to the Denver Zoo? Oh, have you really?
Yeah.
Well, cool. So now I can't BS the story. But Mark tells the story of how somebody at the Denver Zoo was afraid. So he goes through this whole thing about so imagine you're running a zoo. And Justin and Rebecca are like, for us that's not going to be too far to stretch. Talking about our place here, but think about if you're running a zoo, you got to do a couple, 3 things that are paramount in being able to operate that thing. And that's 1, you got to get people to maintain the animals. 2, you got to get feed for the animals. And then 3, you got to figure out how to remove the feed after the animals have returned the feed. And so somebody at the Denver Zoo was afraid. So today, in the Denver Zoo, you can go to the gift shop, and for $9.95, you can buy a can of soup.
Oh my God.
And so what they've done is they've taken that feed after it's been returned from the animals in the different habitats, and they've treated it, and then they've made it, they've added value to it, and now they're selling it for $9.95, and you can take that back home with you and put it on your compost pile, put it on your garden, put it on your grass, and help your own plants grow. So next time you're in a meeting or you go back to school and somebody's whining about, oh, well, we don't have the budget, we don't have the time, we don't have the resources, get online and buy him a can of soup and send it to him. He makes a point. He doesn't mean to be crass. He does it to make a point. He says if you can add value to crap, you can add value to anything. So that's what I like to tell that story as well. I also think about one of the points Mark talks about, and it's very important for us too in the hospitality business. We deal with people so much, and as you go back to school, I can tell already you're going to be involved, you're going to be inspiring your classmates and your leaders there. He talks about a couple things. One is personality power, the extent to which you can just bring your own personality into the deal. And you can attract people to you and to listen and to be inspired just by doing that. We had a guy at Disney's Pop Century Resort. His name was Richard Beck. And so Richard, they had me kind of floating between like the outside part, the luggage part, the bell services, and then also the front desk. So that's the way we built our department. We had 150 cast members that would rotate through. And so it was cool, it was dynamic. You were front desk one day or 2 days, then you rotate back out and be on the front drive and help with the luggage. So Richard Beck was on my team, my homeroom, we used to call him. And so we'd rotate him in and out. So we used to call it the Richard Beck High Five. So Richard would stand out on the front drive, and he's a grown man, and he would every single guest that he came into contact with, little kid, girl, boy, husband, wife, didn't matter the age, he would serve them, he would get their bag, he would answer their questions, he would give them directions, and at the end of every conversation, he'd give them a high five. So I'm watching this for the first month, and I'm like, this is unbelievable, because I'm a high fiver myself. And witnessed it a couple times before. So I started calling it the Richard Beck High Five. So the whole point is can you replace money with imagination? So think about that as you're going through the rest of your internship here. Sure, you're in an internship capacity, but you have wild imaginations. One of the reasons you're here is to help us see the trees for the forest. We've been in it for 19 months. We've been in it for a few weeks. So the extent to which you can have this imagination and help us see stuff, that would certainly create value for us. So think about that too as you get out. How can you replace money with imagination? You can create value for other people, and it doesn't necessarily have to cost a penny. The fourth thing we learned from Fred, maybe the most important one, is the idea that we can reinvent ourselves every single day. We can reinvent ourselves every single day. Most people wake up every morning and they replicate the day before. You're here today, you're here to this internship, and when you go back to your respective schools, you're there to innovate. You're the next phase, you're the next generation of hospitality leadership. So we, being in the industry, we're relying on you and we're leaning on you to help us innovate as we move forward. Help us innovate as we move forward. Think about Christina and her job. Think about Rebecca and her job, and Justin. Nowhere, when we started here, nowhere on their job description, nowhere on the expectations that their bosses lined out for them did it say create an internship and bring 10 people from 10 of the best schools in the country and go out and select them and train them and house them and teach them and learn from them. Didn't say it anywhere. So there was a time, I hope I'm not speaking for her, but there was a time when Christina's job as the training manager for a hotel division might have gotten a little bit mundane, might have gotten a little bit tedious. So what she decided to do is, instead of thinking about getting a new job, she thought about the job she had and how she could approach that differently. So now with that, you can think outside the box and totally reinvent. You can reinvent what you do, you can reinvent how you think about what you're doing. And so this has given both of us, and Justin and Rebecca, an opportunity to do what we're passionate about and then share some of this stuff with you that we've learned in the last 12 years. So the extent to which we can tell you about it now beforehand. This is the prequel to what you're getting ready to do. We want you to have better days. We want you to have better days out there, and we want you to inspire other people to do the exact same thing. So thinking about reinventing yourself every single day. Nobody can prevent you from being extraordinary. Nobody can prevent you from being extraordinary. It doesn't matter. They can hold back resources. They cannot give you the money. They cannot give you the time. But nobody can prevent us from being extraordinary. That's a choice we can make every single day. It's a choice we can make every single day. So as you go through and as you finish up here with us, the last 4 or 5 weeks, and then when you get out of school next year, no matter what job you land in, no matter what capacity, think about 3 things. I love the idea of leading with love. I wrote a blog post one time, Lead with Love, and Mark actually talks about this concept at the very end of the book. So find ways to love what you do, love who you do it with, and love who you do it for. Love what you do, love who you do it with, and love who you do it for. So you might get out there, you might be a housekeeping manager, you might get out there and you might not be manager right when you get out. You might have to start somewhere, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. Arthur Ashe. You might have to start in a job that's not the most magical thing in the world. You might not love everything about it, but you might love one thing. You might love one person. You might love one piece of that puzzle. So focus on that. Focus on the things you do love and just start right there. And think about the fact that everybody makes a difference, and ask yourself, what kind of a difference are you making? Ask yourself, what kind of relationships have you made? What kind of relationships are there for the potential for you to make? How can you create value for somebody else, a peer, a leader, a subordinate? And then how can you utilize those 86,400 seconds that you have and I have in every single day to truly reinvent yourself? There's a quote that I'll end with that Mark Sanborn uses in the book in his speeches. It wasn't until he wrote the book that he actually had a chance to ask Fred, the postman, Fred Shea, why does he do it? Why do you do what you do? He doesn't get bonuses. He doesn't get extra money. He doesn't get an extra PTO day for doing what he does. In fact, Mark talks about he was afraid that if he wrote the book and the U.S. Postal Service found out what Fred was doing, they'd make him stop. But he asked Fred, why do you do it? And Fred says, every day I only worry about one thing. Only worry about one thing. And that's that I waste any of the day that I just finished. So I love this quote that Mr. Sanborn uses. He says, fear nothing but to waste the present moment. Fear nothing but to waste the present moment. So hang on to that. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about the principles that we can all learn from Fred. And I look forward to working with the rest of you for about the next 4 or 5 weeks. And with that, I guess I'll turn it back over to Christina or Justin in a bit. So thank you very much.
You guys have any questions? Anything for Taylor?
That was awesome, Taylor. Thank you.
It's amazing.
All right, thank you. So I think we're going to go ahead and ask Justin to come on up and introduce the Berkman.
Yeah, so I'm Justin. I'm the Director of Learning Development, and I'll be taking the next learning session. And so just to give you some background, when